A package landed on my porch with my name on it and a ripped corner. I opened it and found a phone I never ordered. I checked the receipt. Wrong apartment number. Same building. Same floor. I stood there with the box in my hands, and the ripped corner looked chewed, like somebody had already lifted it and pressed it back down. I could have walked it across the hall and dumped it at his door like a normal neighbor, but our floor never felt normal. You stepped out and you felt eyes on you, even when the hallway looked empty. Still, I carried it over and knocked. No answer. I knocked again, harder, because I was already irritated that I was doing the decent thing for someone who never did the same back. Nothing. No footsteps. No chain. Just that dead quiet that makes you lean in and listen like an idiot. I set the box down by his mat, then I picked it up again like my hand didn't trust the floor. I walked back into my place and shut the door. He'd complained about my music. Not a quick knock, not a "hey man," straight to the office. Twice. I got those little warning slips taped to my door like I was some problem animal. And when I ran into him by the mailboxes, he did this tiny nod, like he'd trained me. The worst was the time he caught me in the hallway with two other tenants and called me trash. Not a shout, not a scene, just loud enough to make sure I heard it and the other people heard it too. I didn't swing on him. I didn't even snap back. I smiled because I'm not stupid and I like having a lease. Then I went inside and replayed that word while I turned the phone box over on my counter, thumb rubbing the torn corner like I could sand the insult off my brain. Trash. Trash. The phone itself was clean and new, heavy in that sleek way nice electronics are, like it belonged to someone who thought they deserved nice things. I didn't even have a plan. I just didn't bring it over. I told myself I'd do it later. Later became tomorrow. Tomorrow became a week. The box sat there like a dare. Every time I walked past it, I felt this small, sharp satisfaction, like I'd taken something back. Then this bigger, uglier guilt that I shoved down with coffee and work and pretending I was too busy to be a decent person. I saw him twice that week in the hallway. He didn't ask about the package. He didn't say hi. He did the same thing he always did. Eyes forward, jaw tight, like walking past me was work. Then someone hit the building storage. Basement level, metal cages, padlocks, shitty lighting that makes everyone look like they're hiding something. Locks popped, cage doors bent, bikes gone, tools gone. A guy on the second floor lost a stack of contractor gear and started screaming in the lobby until spit flew. The super came out red-faced and defensive, started blaming tenants for leaving valuables, and that set people off. Tenants crowded him, pointing at the busted side door that never latched, pointing at the dead camera by the stairwell, pointing at the fact that he always promised fixes and never fixed shit. It turned into a real argument. Not polite, voices bouncing off tile, people stepping closer, someone calling the super useless, the super calling tenants entitled, like a lock cage was some luxury perk. The manager showed up and tried to talk over everyone. Hands up, acting calm, but she looked scared too. I stood there in the back and felt this nasty clarity slide into place. Fear makes people stupid. Fear makes people want a villain with a face and an apartment number. I kept seeing my neighbor's door. I kept seeing that phone box with his apartment number on the label. Same floor, same hallway. I didn't plan it like some mastermind. I just realized I could aim a mob. One push, one helpful detail. And the part that still turns my stomach is how easy my body got about it. No shaking, no dramatic conscience. Just this cold, practical thought. I could stop being the one everyone rolls their eyes at. I can make him the problem. I walked into the office the next morning and did it clean. No ranting, no tears. I kept my face flat, like I hated being involved. I told the manager I might have seen something worth mentioning. I brought up the package mix-up, how I got a box with my name on it that was meant for the guy across the hall, and the box looked tampered with. I said I tried to return it, and he didn't answer. Then I added, like it was an afterthought, that I'd seen him carrying boxes at odd hours earlier in the week, late night, early morning, when the hallway was empty. I said he moved fast and kept looking over his shoulder. I said I didn't think much of it until the storage hit. I didn't say I think he did it. I didn't have to. I watched the manager's eyes change. Not because she cared about truth, but because she cared about having something to hand the cops so the building would stop yelling at her. She asked a couple questions, and I answered just enough. I left before I could overtalk. I walked back upstairs with my heart steady, which should have terrified me more than anything. The cops came the next day. I heard the elevator ding on our floor, and my stomach clenched so hard I tasted metal. I went to my peephole because of course I did. 2 officers. The manager hovering behind them like she wanted credit. The super hanging back like he was part of the operation now that it wasn't his fault anymore. They knocked on his door. No answer. They knocked again. The door cracked open with the chain on, and I saw my neighbor's face go from irritated to confused to pissed in about 2 seconds. He talked through the gap, then the chain came off, and they stepped inside like they belonged there. It didn't stay calm. I heard a thud, then another, then shoes scraping on carpet. He fought because anyone would fight when strangers grab you in your own home. He twisted and yanked, tried to pull his arms free, and they shoved him into the wall by his own doorframe. His cheek hit the paint. The cuffs snapped on. They cinched them tight. One officer yanked his wrists up higher, and he bent forward, gasping, trying to talk and getting cut off. Tenants cracked their doors and watched. Somebody filmed from the stairwell. People whispered like they were at a show. I watched too, mouth open, breathing through my teeth, telling myself I didn't want this while my brain lit up with a sick, hot relief. For a second, his eyes scanned the hallway, searching faces, searching a reason, and I pressed back from the peephole so he wouldn't catch the glint of my eye. They marched him to the elevator, and it swallowed them. The hallway filled with relieved chatter, people congratulating each other for being safe, like fear had been a community project and they'd finally finished it. Later that day, the manager emailed everyone that the police had taken action and thanked residents for staying vigilant. People replied with praise and little emojis like she'd just saved a child from traffic. One tenant wrote that they always had a bad feeling about him. Another wrote that the building felt safer already. I read those replies and my hand shook, not for pride, not from guilt exactly, but from seeing how fast adults turn into a crowd when you feed them a story they want. The building didn't get safer. It just got quieter about the real problem. Days passed, and the details started leaking out anyway, because truth always drips through cracks, even when people try to seal it. No bikes in his place. No tools. No stash. Nothing that matched the theft. The cops came back once, quieter this time, irritated, and the manager suddenly stopped sending updates. The super stopped puffing his chest. Tenants started backpedaling in real time. Suddenly, well, we didn't see anything. Suddenly, maybe it was someone else, like they hadn't watched him get slammed into a wall and nodded along. A woman I'd never seen showed up at his door a few days later with red eyes and trash bags, moving fast, not looking at anyone, like she expected the hallway to spit. His door stayed shut after that. When it did open, it was quick, like someone slipping out to breathe. I kept the phone in a drawer. I never turned it on again. I never returned it. Not because I wanted it, but because returning it meant admitting what I did. Every time I thought about walking it over, I pictured his face in that hallway when the cuffs clicked. The moment confusion turned into rage, and my own silence behind the wood. I started turning my music down without thinking. I started checking my peephole before I left. I started flinching when the elevator stopped on my floor. I'd wanted power for a second, and now everything felt like a threat. I kept telling myself it was just a rumor, just a suggestion, like I didn't put my hand on the blade. But I did. I handed the building a villain because I was angry and petty and tired of being called trash, and everyone grabbed the story with both hands because it made them feel clean. He didn't do it. I know, because the only thing he ever stole was my peace. I stole the rest from him and let everyone clap. The ladder shook. He climbed anyway. He always climbed. He loved acting like the tough guy who never needed help. He'd been on me since sunrise, talking loud so the whole crew could hear, turning every little thing into a test I was failing. He smacked the back of my hard hat like I was his kid. He bumped my shoulder when I carried studs. He called me slow, called me soft, then laughed like it was a joke I was supposed to laugh at too. I told him to back the fuck off once, quiet, and he got louder on purpose. The foreman kept his eyes on his phone and let it happen. That's how it goes on some sites. You either eat it or you swing and lose your job. I saw the rung crack earlier when I moved supplies. I felt it flex under my boot. I set it back against the wall and walked away. I told myself it wasn't my problem. I told myself he deserved a scare. It was the site ladder, old aluminum, paint speckled, one rubber foot half gone, so it always rocked unless you jammed it right. I climbed 2 steps to grab a box off a shelf, and that middle rung popped. Not a squeak, a pop. I stepped down fast and looked. Hairline split where the rung met the rail, sharp edge catching my thumb. I pressed it again and felt it give like a tooth. I stood there with my palm on it, feeling it flex, and my brain did this fast math. Tell someone and get laughed at, or say nothing and let the tough guy eat it. I could have dragged it to the dumpster. I could have laid it flat and tagged it out. I could have yelled for a new one. I didn't. I leaned it back where it always lived. I walked away like I never saw shit. I told myself he'd feel it and pick a different ladder because he was so experienced. I told myself I wasn't responsible for grown men. Under all that, I knew I was doing it because I wanted him scared. I wanted him knocked down one peg. I wanted the site to watch him eat his own bullshit for once. He grabbed it like it was his. No test bounce, no check, just grabbed. He clipped on his tool belt, planted it under a header, and started up, still talking shit to somebody behind him. He climbed with a tool belt. He shifted his weight near the top. The rung snapped. The ladder kicked out. He dropped fast and hit the concrete on his side. His head bounced once. His mouth opened and nothing came out. The sound hit me first, then the picture. Body on slab, then skull on concrete, a dull knock that made my stomach flip. His leg twisted under him and the boot pointed wrong, like the ankle forgot how to be an ankle. People ran. Someone yelled a call, 911. I stepped back and let the crowd fill in around him. I didn't kneel. I didn't check his neck. I didn't do CPR. I just stood there and watched his leg twist wrong under him. A guy tried to grab his shoulders and haul him up, and the foreman screamed for him to stop. Another guy shouted that we needed to clear the path for the lift. 2 dudes started shoving each other right over the fallen ladder, like they were fighting for space in a hallway. Somebody dropped a phone. Somebody kept repeating, "Don't move him," like saying it enough times would fix anything. He tried to breathe, and it came out in short, wet pulls. His eyes stayed open, staring past the ceiling steel like it could explain how a guy can go from loud to broken in 1 second. The supervisor stormed in with his clipboard and his clean boots and his face already angry, like anger could keep him safe from liability. He looked at the ladder, the snapped rung hanging like a broken finger, and he started firing questions at everyone at once. Who said it? Who last used it? Was it inspected? Did anyone notice damage? His eyes kept sweeping faces, hunting for the one person who'd say the wrong thing. My hands shook inside my pockets, and I dug my nails into my palm to steady them. Paramedics pushed us back. They slid hands under his head and neck and strapped him down. When they lifted him, his jaw clenched once, and his eyes rolled toward the crowd like he was trying to focus on a face. For half a second, I thought he found me. I shifted behind a column anyway. The ambulance doors shut, and the siren faded, and the site went quiet in a way it never goes quiet. Then the foreman did what foremen do. He told everyone to get back to work. He yelled about time. He yelled about schedule. Guys moved, but nobody moved right. People snapped at each other over stupid shit. A laborer dropped a bundle of studs and started cursing like the noise gave him permission. At break, the talk turned into blame. One guy said the tough ones always get hurt eventually. Another said the company buys garbage and calls it equipment. A coworker cornered me by the porta-johns and asked if I'd been on that ladder earlier because he thought he saw me by it. His eyes were wide, more scared than accusing. I shook my head and told him no. The lie came out clean and quick, and it made me feel colder than the morning air. The supervisor asked later if anyone saw the ladder look bad. I shrugged. and said no. I signed a safety form like a good employee. My name sat there in neat letters like I was proud of it. They tossed the ladder in a scrap pile out back and acted like that solved it. The supervisor pulled a couple of us into the trailer after lunch and made us write statements on blank paper, like our words were bolts he could tighten around the story. He kept asking if the ladder had been tagged, if anyone saw it wobble, if anyone felt unsafe. I kept my answers short and useless. A guy across the table kept staring at my hands like he expected them to confess without my mouth. When I walked out, my stomach kept rolling like I'd swallowed nails. Next day, they made us watch a safety video in the trailer with a guy in a spotless vest talking about speaking up. Nobody spoke up. Nobody mentioned the crack I saw. Nobody mentioned me. At night, I kept hearing it. Not like a story, like a sound stuck in the wall. I'd drift off and my brain would replay that dull knock, and I'd jerk awake with my heart hammering. My jaw ached from clenching. I drank more. I got meaner at work. I started checking every rung on every ladder like I could undo one choice by being careful forever. Months passed, and people stopped saying his name. The site found new fights, new delays, new assholes to hate. I started to believe I'd buried it. That thought tasted rotten, but I held on to it because it let me clock in and keep moving. He came back months later with hardware in his spine and a dead stare. He moved stiff, like every step had to get permission from his back first. The swagger was gone. The laugh was gone. They put him on light duty, and he took it without a speech, without the old chest puffing. Guys tried to act friendly, and it came out wrong, like they wanted him to tell them it was all just bad luck. He didn't. He just worked. The first time a ladder came out near him, he stopped mid-step and just stared at it. His hand hovered over a rung, then dropped. He waved another guy over to brace it, and he climbed like every rung might bite. He got up 2 steps, came back down, and went to find a lift instead. No jokes. No, watch this. Just quiet caution that made my skin crawl. The first time he passed me, he lifted his head and looked straight at me. Not a glare, not a threat, just flat, steady eyes that felt heavier than yelling. Like he was matching my face to something he couldn't quite name. My throat tightened and my hands started shaking again, and I hated myself for it. He kept walking. After he came back, little things started happening around me. My battery pack vanished and turned up dead in a puddle. My hard hat got knocked off a gang box. A ladder I set up got shifted when I turned my back. Nothing big enough to report. Nothing you can prove. Just enough to keep me tight and angry. I snapped at guys for touching my stuff. They snapped back. The foreman threatened to send people home if we kept acting like children. Everybody argued more. Everybody shoved more. The accident sat between us like a stain nobody wanted to look at. One afternoon, the bay went quiet for a minute. Saws off, radios quiet, just wind pushing dust and the distant beep of a lift. He walked by close enough that his tool belt brushed my thigh. He stopped for a second, right beside me, and I felt him there like a weight. I couldn't make myself speak. I couldn't even breathe right. He looked at me with that dead stare, then looked away like I wasn't worth the words, and kept moving. I kept waiting for him to call me out. I kept waiting for a shove on the stairs, a mistake with a load, something clean and violent that would at least end the suspense. He never did. He just existed near me and made me do all the punishing myself. I tell myself I didn't push him. I tell myself the rung would have snapped on anyone. I tell myself he earned it with the way he treated people. None of that changes the part where I saw the crack and set the ladder back like it was nothing. I still hear that head hit when the site gets quiet. He slammed a stack of dirty plates on my line and told me to move faster. I grabbed his wrist and shoved him back. He hit the sink, grabbed his lower back, and kept working anyway because he needed the shift. The kitchen was already soaked. Dish spray hung in the air like fog. The floor stayed slick no matter how many mats we threw down. The hand sink leaked a steady little stream that ran to the drain like it had a path memorized. The ceiling over prep had a stain the size of a pizza pan, and it still dripped when the dishwasher ran too long. I kept the towel stuffed in my waistband, and still my hands felt wet all night. He'd been in since before, open, quiet, head down, running dish like it was a punishment he could work off. Rinse, stack, load, unload. Water up his arms, knuckles split, skin raw. He braced his hip against the 3-comp sink and moved like he was trying not to break. Tickets came in waves. Not insane, just enough to keep everybody pissed. Sauté needed pans. Servers dumped bus tubs like they were trying to drown him. The tubs hit the pit and water sloshed over the edge, ran down his apron, pooled around his shoes. He didn't snap. He didn't talk. He just wrung the apron once and went back to spraying. I shoved him and he clipped the sink with his hip. I heard a grunt. He grabbed his back, eyes blank for a beat, then went right back to work. That's what made me feel bigger, that he didn't even have the freedom to stop. I watched him limp all night. I watched him wash knives one-handed. I watched him flinch every time he bent. The sprayer screamed and the mist coated the line. My cutting boards stayed damp. Onion stuck to my knife. Every time the swing door opened, cold air rolled in from the dining room and hit the wet on my skin like a slap. He kept twisting wrong because there wasn't room to do it right. He'd straighten up and have to grab the sink edge like the stainless was the only thing keeping him upright. The grease trap started burping halfway through service, that rotten sewer smell that means the drains are losing the fight. Water stopped disappearing fast enough. It backed up and spread, thin and gray, carrying onion skins and shredded lettuce like trash in a gutter. A line cook shoved a broom at him and told him to push it to the drain. He tried. The water just rolled back out again. He slipped once, caught himself on the rack, and the pain hit his face so hard it looked like he got slapped. The cook laughed and called him a bitch. I told the cook to get back to his station, but I said it like I was annoyed he'd made noise, not like I was defending anybody. The line guys started in. Where the fuck are my plates? Dish, you alive? I let them. Their anger made my job easier. I walked past the pit and told him to pick it up like he hadn't been picking it up since noon. He nodded without looking at me. That pissed me off more than if he'd argued. A server dropped a water glass and the shards skated across the wet tile. Somebody kicked them under a shelf. We didn't stop service. He went down to grab the big pieces and his back seized so hard his whole body jerked. He sucked air, stood up too fast, and had to hold the rack to keep from tipping. I saw it. I acted like I didn't. A pan slipped and clanged. He froze, like he expected me to fire him. I just stared. He picked it up slow, and his face tightened like the pain had teeth. The sauté guy laughed and called him Grandpa. I didn't shut it down. He asked for 5 minutes near 9. Not a break, just 5 minutes. His hand shook when he reached for a rack. I told him no. I told him he could sit when we closed. He looked at me like he was deciding whether to keep being a person, then turned back to the sink and kept spraying. Near close, the hot water started dropping like it always did when the boiler got tired. The rinse went lukewarm, then cold. Steam vanished. The air turned sharp. He flexed his fingers, cursed once under his breath, and kept going, washing in cold like it didn't matter what his body wanted. The slowdown hit the line, and the line hit him back, slamming pans beside him so hard water jumped out of the sink. He didn't yell. He just kept working, and his breathing got louder. Short, controlled, like he was trying not to scream. At closing, he asked for his pay early. I laughed and told him to wait like everyone else. He cursed at me. I wrote down his full name off the schedule. I went outside, sat in my car, and called him to tip with that name and the address. He asked by the office door, one hand on his back like he was holding himself together. He said he needed the money now. Rent, medicine, no begging, just facts. He looked at the puddle under the mop sink more than he looked at my face. I laughed because it was easier than feeling anything. I told him payroll was Friday. I told him everybody waits. He muttered, "Fuck you," like he hated himself for saying it. That was enough. That was the spark. I felt that petty itch, the need to win. I had his name on the schedule in my handwriting. I'd seen his file when the owner shoved it across my desk and said, "Just put him on." Pieces missing. Gaps we all pretended not to see because kitchens run on pretending. We pretend the ceiling isn't mold. We pretend people don't fall apart until after their shift. I went into the office, tore a strip off the schedule, and wrote his full name again like I was signing something. A drip from the ceiling hit the desk and spread into a little star. I wiped it with my sleeve and walked out. It had rained earlier. The lot was shiny, broken puddles reflecting the neon sign. I sat in my car, still smelling like bleach and wet onion, and I called. I kept my voice calm. I gave the name. I gave our address. I said fake documents. I said he'd talked about it. I said he'd threatened me. I stacked lies neat and quick like plates. When I hung up, I sat there listening to rainwater drip off the gutter onto the pavement, steady and patient, and I remember thinking how easy it is for water to carry everything away and still leave the smell behind. I went back in and finished closing. I dumped the mop bucket and watched dirty water swirl down the drain. I locked up and drove home with my hands wrinkled from being wet all day, like I'd been soaking in it too. At home, I kept smelling dishwater on my skin even after I washed, like it had soaked into me. In the morning, I kept checking my phone like it was going to confess something. I showed up early anyway. I said the same stupid manager shit. I told people to tighten up. I told myself it was just business. Next day, 2 agents walked into the kitchen. I didn't point. I didn't speak. I just kept slicing onions while they asked questions. He tried to talk. They grabbed him. He shook loose once and looked at me like he finally understood the game. Their shoes left dry prints on the wet tile. Badges flashed. Manager, that was me. I kept my head down and cut onions because I needed my hands busy. The board was damp and onion juice ran in thin lines, little streams to the edge. My eyes burned. I didn't wipe them because I liked having a reason. They said his name. Not Dish, his name. He was at the sink again, spraying pans back stiff. He turned too fast and winced, but he still tried to stand straight. He talked fast, trying to explain. One agent told him to step outside. He said he couldn't leave. He said he was working like work could shield him. They asked for papers. His hands were wet and shaking when he reached for his wallet. The agent grabbed his elbow like the answer was already decided. He pulled back once, reflex like he was slipping on the wet floor, and his body fought to stay upright. They tightened up and marched him toward the back. He twisted, shook loose for half a second, and looked right at me. No begging, no screaming, just that clear, exhausted understanding, like every little thing clicked into place at once. Like me shoving him into the sink, me watching him limp, me laughing at his money, me standing silent now. All of it lined up and pointed straight at him. I kept slicing. The back door opened and damp alley air rushed in. I heard his shoes scrape on wet tile. I heard him say my name once, quiet. Then the door slammed and the sound cut off like someone shut off a faucet. Kitchen noise came back louder. The sprayer screamed again. Somebody made a joke. Nobody said his name. Nobody wanted to be next. There was a wet outline where he'd been standing, footprints and drip marks like he'd melted into the floor and drained away. The owner called me later, annoyed, asking if this was going to mess with service. I told him no. He said good and hung up. I went home, showered, and slept. The line ran smoother after that. Nobody said his name again. I still act like a normal manager. I still tell new hires we're family here. Fucking liar.